Hi y'all, and welcome back to my channel. And welcome to a video that I've wanted to do for a fairly long time. I may have done it once before on my channel, like forever ago. If I have, I will leave said corresponding video down below. But today we're going to be talking about makeup that, in my opinion, allegedly, that should not have been discontinued for one reason or another. Now, I feel like that in today's climate, with the mass, with the pushing, with the always releasing limited edition items, 9 times out of 10, the whole concept of discontinuation isn't as significant as it used to be during a time where they weren't pushing limited edition as much, where every other release wasn't limited edition. And so a lot of these products sort of come from an era where permanent products were a thing, where, like I said, every other collection and all releases were just limited edition. We aren't putting as much permanent products on the market now as we used to, in my opinion. We're just releasing more than we used to. So with the going, wave of just makeup that's get released, you see it, you're like, okay, all right, that's gonna be here for a little bit and then it's gonna be gone. Or you also have those limited edition collections and things that tend to stick around forever. Sort of like the unwanted gift that keeps on giving in a desperate attempt to sell more units before we do discontinue it. I'm gonna be talking about some things that some of y'all may have guessed. I do feel though that when it comes to some permanent products, a lot of things don't get discontinued unless it's been in a brand for an extended period of time. It's not as significant as just the turnover of limited edition that we see today. We are going to start off with something that was limited edition but was met with a huge amount of love and acceptance. This was a favorite. This was a cult classic, the one that got away eyeshadow palette. Y'all probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And that is the Kat Von D ever so coveted Holiday 2015 Mi Vida Loca Remix palette. This palette brought into the forefront sort of a color story, a burst of color that we had not completely entirely seen done on the market yet. It was at this time where Kat Von D's peak was happening, the formulas, the presentation. In this moment in time, this brand had everything going for it and everything was poured into this palette. And despite all the hue and cry, the begging and pleading and asking for it to be made permanent, it wasn't made permanent. It took that shiz and they don't make it no more. There wasn't even like a re-promotion ever, which is something I feel like, Anastasia, Too Faced, some brands tend to do when something is popular. Morphe. But Kat Von D was like, no. Those of you who got it, yay for you. Those of you who didn't, sucks to be you. And even years after this palette had been discontinued, people were still saying, if she brought back that Mi Vida Loca remix palette, all could be forgiven. Well, not all could be forgiven. But people were pushing for this thing to be made permanent because it was such a standout, not only from her brand, but in the makeup market. Not so much today. If the Mi Vida Loca remix had been released today, people would have been like, oh boy, another rainbow palette with some neutrals thrown in. I have said it once and I will say it again. The Kat Von D Mi Vida Loca remix palette is the James Charles palette before the James Charles palette was a thing. It is also what the James Charles palette wishes it could be. And I feel, that palette was so influential, so monumental within the community that it shouldn't have been discontinued. They should have kept it as is, or they could have even taken it, got rid of that big giant record-esque style packaging, you know, formatted it like one of their shade and light whatevers, and it would have been such a big seller. So long as they maintained color story and consistent formulation. So in my heart of hearts, that thing should have been made permanent. It kind of had the same whatever as the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance, which was originally limited edition, and there was so much screaming and gnashing of teeth and rioting in the streets that they made it permanent. Brands need to listen more to what their consumers want. Something else that, in my opinion, it's always my opinion. Some of y'all may agree with me, some of you may not. But something that shouldn't have been discontinued, that is, again, I don't understand why, when a product is so loved by so many people, why the brand then decides,
well, I guess it's time to get rid of this.
The Too Faced Love Flush blushes. Those adorable little sweetheart candy hearts looking blushes that people loved for the packaging, people loved for the aesthetic, people loved for the consistent formula. I love these blushes. They're absolutely beautiful. And even if they discontinued them, obviously they're on this list. Even if they had discontinued the whole range but made permanent that fancy little holiday love flush blush palette, I think that would have even been an okay trade-off, because then people could still get this beautiful array of colors, this lovely formula, this really, how can you have the mindset to not keep these blushes, which a lot of people love, but then you can keep those like piddly little highlighters that had a lot more kind of back and forth, and you know, there was some people that really didn't like them. And I understand not everybody loves everything, but I feel like the blushes had a more positive reception than those highlighters did. So why are the blushes discontinued and the highlighters are not? And I understand that they probably had to make way. You know, you don't want to have like 50 billion blushes, whatever. They were obviously having to make way for the new Tutti Frutti ones, which I do absolutely love, but those are really high shine, glittery, shimmery, you know, glowy blush loving whatever, which the Love Hearts ones have matte, they have satin, you know, they're very natural, kissed and beautiful sort of blushes, whereas the Tutti Frutti ones are a lot more in your face. So I feel it wouldn't have deterred them to have those two ranges, because the both ranges kind of serve very different purposes on the face. So I really don't understand why they discontinue. Obviously, I am not their manager. I do not have a spreadsheet of sales. Maybe the blushes weren't doing as good as I think they did. Like I said, I'm not in there. I don't know. I don't have the specs. Those are really, really, really good, and I just don't understand when you have a really good product that you decide, all right, it's time to let it go. Like I keep saying, I don't know what the sales whatever's on those things, and maybe they just weren't viable anymore. But people, when they were released, really loved them. This next one is not necessarily it shouldn't have been discontinued. It shouldn't have been discontinued and then replaced by this. Urban Decay, one of the OG brands within the community, their original Naked palette. Something that I bought, barely used, and have since decluttered. But Urban Decay decided, for whatever reason, this palette had served its purpose. It had lived on the market long enough, got them a lot of sales, and they decided it was time to retire it. Which I do not consider to be a bad move in and of itself, because the early Naked palettes are very dated. They're very sort of kind of late 90s, early 2000s makeup. You know, you got like the all shimmer lid going on in there and the really thin pencil eyebrows. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It kind of exudes that sort of aesthetic. So to retire it, I don't think was a bad thing. What I think they shouldn't have done is retired it and then basically, I don't think it was outright said, but basically replaced it with the Naked Reloaded, which as a palette, As outdated as I may want to say the Urban Decay Original Naked palette is, I still consider it to be way better than this Naked Reloaded palette, which just, oh my goodness, it lacked depth, it lacked quality, it had that random ready peachy tone. You know, it's not that the Naked palette should have been discontinued, it's that it shouldn't have been discontinued and then have an emphasis put on this other palette sort of coming in to take its place. You know, there's a lot, as outdated as it is, you know, there are big shoes to fill for such an iconic palette. You better be bringing something pretty banging that is revolutionary in and of itself. You can't just discontinue one and then bring in this piddly little thing. Like, let's throw some neutrals in there, put it in crappy satin packaging, and throw in a magenta, not magenta, a corally ready peachy shade, because that's revolutionary. I mean, at this point in the makeup game, that is what's revolutionary. So it's not the Naked palette in and of itself shouldn't have been discontinued. It's the way in which it was discontinued and then presented to us was this truly subpar color story knockoff. Something that a couple of y'all have actually expressed to me, that you wish these weren't discontinued, you wish that these weren't limited edition. I 110% agree with you. I own all of them, but the Becca World Glow highlighters. These highlighters were done in collaboration with a couple different influencers from around the world. We had the Berlin World Glow, we had the Royal Glow, there was Spanish Rose Glow, the Paris one, which I think was the first one, and then they did do one with a gal from Australia, but it wasn't like just a highlighter. It had like highlighter and then like a little surfboard of bronzer. That's the only one I didn't get because I don't like no surfboard of bronzer all up in my highlighter. And these are beautiful. The majority of them are such beautiful, unique colors. There's a lot of shift, a lot of turn. I mean, that Parisian Lights one, the Royal Glow, the Berlin, I mean, they're all just so beautiful, and they each bring something that is unique, and I don't necessarily want to say innovative, but definitely different than other highlighters Becca and other brands have on the market. I understand 9 times out of 10 collaboration products are limited edition unless you're Jaclyn Hill, and James Charles, and I think Manny has some too. You know what I mean? And so I kind of understand where that's coming from, but when you have a product that is so good and so standout and so beautiful. I mean, I admit, I am a little bit not happy that they have not yet done like a Tokyo one. You know, your girl wants some kind of Tokyo glow. I need some Harajuku chic all up on my cheekbones. That would just, I swear to God, if they were to do that and they were to do something, pull something like they did with the Australian one, and we're like, oh, we've got this highlighter, but we've got like a little Tory gate of bronzer, I would lose my mind. These highlighters are just so good, and I have a soft spot for highlighters. Y'all know this, but it is just a really and wonderful, unique extension of what Becca already has to offer, especially considering that the shades and the tones and the reflex in these highlighters are so unique. That's something that I wish wasn't discontinued. That's something a couple of y'all, like I said, have expressed to me. And I think it is also kind of shady though, because they like discontinued them, and then with like the Berlin Girl Glow one, they were like, oh, it's coming back for like this much. I hate it when brands do that. It's like, sell all the stock and let it go. Don't keep bringing it back and forth. I mean, Becca's very good at that. We understand that trend with Jaclyn Hill and Champagne Pop. Like, make it permanent or let it go. This next one is a very personal one. Not like personal emotionally, but personal preference. Like, it's a concealer. The only reason I know this concealer isn't available anymore is because when I went to buy it, or maybe link it, and then I really wanted to buy it, I couldn't find it. Your girl has come a long way in her makeup journey. For an extended period of time, concealer was like, what? No, I'm just gonna cake makeup on my face. But when I started going into said concealer trend, my favorite end-all be-all was the Urban Decay Naked Skin Concealer. I used it up. It was one of my first empties ever on my channel. And this concealer, although not high coverage, not thick, not gonna give you like a full drag beat, it was light and healthy and illuminating, blended like a dream, never looked cakey, crepey, or anything nasty. It was just a perfect natural finish. And if it looked good on my complexion then, I would love to see what it looks like on my now skin-cared face. But they don't make it anymore. It was discontinued. I can't really sit here and be like, oh, they shouldn't have discontinued it because it was amazing. I mean, I thought it was amazing, but I'm not entirely sure what the whole world thought about that concealer. I only purchased it once because I purchased it at a time where, oh no, mustn't use up any of my product lest we run out. And so I kind of, you know, it's definitely an older product, kind of like more maybe an OG item, because I don't think they sell even the original, that original Naked foundation. So maybe they just discontinued the whole range to make room for their new ranges of foundations, but man, did I love that concealer. Okay. Something that I feel very passionately about that shouldn't have been discontinued. And this is sort of another shouldn't have, I mean, the product shouldn't have been discontinued, but it's also product shouldn't have been discontinued and then replaced with this next thing. Tarte, which y'all know is a brand that I don't necessarily, it's not that I don't like it, it's just that their products for the most part are just kind of to me. But I purchased, reviewed, and loved their Clay Play Face Shaping Palette Volume 1, which was all matte. You got eyeshadows, you got 3 contour shades. This was my end-all be-all cosplay palette because it had everything you needed to take your mortal human face and transform it into a 2D cartoon character. You shaped your eyes, you shaped your nose, you shaped your face. You could use the bronzers, the contour bronzer products as eyeshadows. You know, if you had the right kind of whatever, the favorite nose contour was actually one of the eyeshadows. It just had so much versatility. It really was a face shaping palette because it kind of had the best of both worlds. If you think about Kat Von D's Shade and Light Eye and the original Shade and Light face palette, it was like both of those just smushed together, condensed down into this perfect, beautiful artistry palette. And then they discontinued it after they gave us Volume 2, which was the Piddly Poor Man's version. The depth in it was nowhere near as good. It had like a couple shimmer eyeshadows, it had a blush, it had a chunky highlighter, and please to tell me, Tarte, why this palette that a lot of people loved, including myself, compared to the second one, which a lot of people were not happy about, why is the first one discontinued, but the second one is still available and not limited edition? Like what is the reasoning that, oh, this one is good, people like this one,
We should get rid of it.
and then, oh, people don't like this one, we should make this permanent. What is the logic? Who is your management? Who is your PR whatever? Who is taking the polls to decide? What kind of control group do you have to decide what gets discontinued and what gets made permanent? And I wouldn't be as upset if they kept both of them permanent. All right, you buy the good one, and I guess some people can buy the other one. But like I said, when you have that clear, obvious, people like this one compared to people aren't happy with this one, where's the logic in deciding what stays and what goes? I mean, basically, there probably isn't any logic, but like, if that palette was still available, I probably wouldn't have decluttered it. I would have held on to it for that contouring whateverness, but because it isn't available anymore, I decluttered that one as well as the second one because the second one sucks. Even though I gave it a favorable review, but just in comparison to the first one, which had depth and it was just so versatile, and then this one that's pasty and whatever and made for a very limited range of skin tones. It's just chunky highlighter. That's stupid. This is something that hasn't been discontinued yet, but it is something that is marked as a limited edition. Fenty, which is a brand that I love highlighters from, and I think that's about it, except for their summer collection of those Poutsicle lipsticks. I am not a fan of the original Fenty matte lipstick formula, but this Poutsicle formula, I bought it on a whim. I anti-hauled it, and then I bought it because it went on sale and I have issues, cute little bright colors and candy-coated packaging, and ended up falling absolutely in love with the formula. It is so creamy and smooth and pigmented. It is like the best mixture of stain, balm, and lipstick put into one. And to be able to curate that formula with shades like blue and that deep green / blue color, that is something remarkable. You know, even if she were to discontinue, you know, these shades because they're not exactly, they got a pink, I missed out on the orange. They got 2 purples, you know, she was like, okay, those colors a little bit off the wall. But if she were to take that formula and put it into a whole range, I would go through my lipsticks and be like, well, that color they have, and I would repurchase those colors in the Poutsicle formula. Now, I have seen that she has released like sheer balm-esque whatevers. A couple of y'all tagged me in it, so I'm not sure if that is the same formula. I'm definitely gonna check, even though the majority of the colors are kind of not even things that I really already own in my collection, but that formula, it's just smooth, hydrating, looks healthy on your lips, lasts a long time. Y'all know I do not fall needlessly in love with a bullet lipstick, and this is a bullet lipstick that just has my heart. They're just so, every time I'll be doing like hot pink lips, 9 times out of 10, it is from the Fenty Poutsicle. I just love that formula. If I get all my bullet lipsticks in that formula, I'd use them a whole heck of a lot more. Another highlighter that is, I talked about it in a underrated products. I'm not sure what's going on with this brand, so I'm not sure if it's just the brand that's gone. They used to be sold at Ulta, but Model's Own, and these are the face sculpting highlighters. They had one that was in like peach pearl, which was a pretty good dupe for Becca's that amethyst one, sparkling amethyst. It's lilac geode and amethyst something. They had one that was a pretty good dupe for that one, and then they had a beautiful, gorgeous gold one. I still have them both in my collection because they are amazing highlighters. They were like $5, and the glow that you get off of these things were just absolutely stunning. So I have absolutely no idea if it's just the brand on a whole that is getting like liquidated, or just not having them at Ulta. I will try to do a little research, and like I probably can't, well, I can't link any of these products. I was about to be all like, well, I'll leave the information with the links down below, and I'm like,
girl, these things don't exist no more.
but I will try to leave the information that I can find about Model's Own as a brand down below. I will list the products, just can't link them because they're discontinued. But these highlighters were just, I would say that they were a better formula than the majority of Makeup Revolution highlighters I've tried, better formula than the Wet n Wild Mega Glow, better than the Milani Strobe highlighters. These just packed so much punch for the price you paid. The first time I put one of these on my face, it was like molten, just beautiful lusciousness, just smoothed into my skin like metallic butter. Just an absolutely amazing formula that I wish, hopefully, maybe still exists. Then the next thing here is a very subjective. This I think is very personal to me, because I understand why this sort of thing would be discontinued, you know, why it doesn't necessarily serve a purpose anymore. Y'all know that Sugarpill is a brand that I would like to own more from. Y'all would have also seen in my declutter that I had to let go of my Heartbreaker palettes, as well as the Sparkle Bag.
Bye-bye.
As well as the Sparkle Baby and the Cold Chemistry palettes, which were some of my absolute favorite palettes. Anytime I wanted brights, the Sparkle Baby palette was used to death. The colors were so unique. I loved the Cold Chemistry. You know, if they kept Cold Chemistry and Sparkle Baby, I think that would make more sense than the Heartbreaker palettes, because the Heartbreaker palettes were curated at a time that Sugarpill didn't have as many colors. They weren't as like, I don't want to say as established. They didn't have as many colors to offer. I don't know if they'd created their like pro palette system, which is what they do now with the occasional eyeshadow release. But you know, sometimes, I would have liked them to not be discontinued just for the fact that I would want to purchase them again. And I think it's sentimentality more than it is practicality, being like, well, these were an amazing product. I mean, they were. But if you compare that to how they do their eyeshadow now, I can understand why it was discontinued. I just wish that I could, you know, repurchase them. It was a very significant part of my makeup journey, so I'm very attached to those palettes and my memories of kind of what I did in using them. And so it's definitely not a sense of, oh, you shouldn't have discontinued this because it was like, you know, like I said, compared to how they run their eyeshadows now, compared to the fact that you can just build your own pro palette, those palettes were just for really bright, vivid colors. You know, when you're dealing with like bright, vivid colors, you know, there's less of the concept of having a color story and a gradient. You know, Sugarpill just sells these big, bright, beautiful, glorious, punchy colors. And so I can understand how having pre-made palettes wouldn't necessarily be as lucrative or as successful as their pro palette system. But I really do wish they would have kept the Sparkle Baby palette, because the aesthetic was just, it had the kitten on it, the beautiful colors. You know, back in my day when I was convinced that I was going to live my life and become a famous living doll on the internet, I was using the ever-loving shiz out of that palette. And so I think this whole shouldn't have been discontinued is more based on my personal experience, emotional attachment, and everything like that. But I do wish that Sugarpill would release more palettes on a whole, and not just like for pan limited edition collaboration palettes. I wish they would invest more time into making less disjointed palettes, because y'all know those two capsule collections just weren't doing it for me. But that is the end of this particular products I don't think that should have been discontinued for one reason or another. Obviously, I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on these products down below, as well as letting me know a product that you think shouldn't have been taken off the market, whether it is something that was limited edition, that was received with a lot of love and appreciation, or if it's an OG that, you know, the brand thought it had spent its time, it had lived its life, and it was time to just let it go. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah!